baby 止めないでね永遠でつく恋をしようって終わらない愛の誓ってたあの言葉は
So I'm reading Hatsuki Sakura, and I ended up finishing Dead Days first. Pretty weird title to read for Christmas season, but here I am. It's from Clock Up, and I still think Euphoria is still like their popular title. And you know there's like Megan Bates, which the guy that wrote that also wrote this one, and technically also like Restless Sheep that came out like in December. People told me this one was pretty tame compared to the rest of them, and overall I'd probably agree with them. There's still a scene or two that are kind of gross, but I'll get to that later. But it's probably not the one you're thinking of. B&B also says it shares some characters from Restless Sheep, and that's kind of the case, but also not. At most you can say this title happened in the future, but you don't really need to know anything about the other ones from what I can tell anyways, because it's like, oh, it's one character, and it wasn't even like the actual character. Anyways, the plot itself is pretty short. I think the title itself is around 12 hours, but if you cut off all the porn, then maybe it's around 6 hours, maybe 7, or maybe 5 hours. But that could also be like being the case that, oh, the H scenes are really long, and it just drained the shit. I mean, it's like, oh my god, it's so frequent. It's one of those titles where the plot is there to set up the porn, not the porn being used as like a marketing piece to get to the VN. Basically, Teru, the main protagonist, wakes up in a container with a couple of other people, and it ended up being that they're already dead, and the first bit is just to see how like Teru died and what he's like. But he's an asshole, and he keeps on lying to fit in and to keep his status and all that shit, and he's kind of a clown, but not in the way that people like mock him for it. But the setup is an easygoing guy that can be talked to just to get to like his popular friends. He starts fucking around in matters that he shouldn't, and he gets killed. And the part that's kind of funny is because like he basically died because he didn't sell someone out, and it wasn't because like, oh, it's out of his kindness of his own heart. It's like, no, he's still a piece of shit. He just didn't want help from that specific person. He's a stubborn mule, and it's a good setup for the final route. So now that he's back, everybody in the container gets told that they have to handle their assigned tasks or they die. And that's because like, oh, they run on the special like electrical charge and they won't recharge anything unless Teru and the gang actually do what they're told. And that being like, oh, they have to kill these specter things that look like regular people, but they're like just electrical charges. Basically, they'll run out of battery and they die if they don't do anything. And the idea is like, oh, the only people that can see these specter things are from the same electrical charge which you guys run on or some shit. So you guys have to do it. And they look like fucking dumbasses because they're just attacking air if someone records them. It's kind of funny. So they do their hunting, they get their charge, and you know, spikes up their adrenaline, and the body's like, holy shit, what is this? And now it's pound down time, and a lot of porn happens. Funny enough, early on there's like a lot more emphasis on the plot and the character's psyche, but that section diminishes to the point that the specter killing just gets brought up as like an aftermath because there's like other stuff going on. But honestly, that was the more interesting part of the title. It still lingers around, but it's not the priority. The idea is that even killing things becomes monotonous to them. It's just another day. It's their dead days. Oh, alright. Fucking dumbass. Anyways, there's 3 routes, and I guess there's 3 bad endings, alongside another one where you can just fail to get into the true route. The first 2 are with the 2 characters you find in the container. They have some things going on for them, but it's also kind of whatever. Basically, the endings are sudden, and the conflicts are minor compared to what's usually happening. But not even like comparing to the true route, it's just like minor shit. Monami is married and has a kid, so it's more in her psyche about doing this shit and that she doesn't want to do it, and she's mentally breaking apart. So she wants to, you know, she wants to live for her family, but she's also really horny after doing these tasks, and the husband isn't around all the time, and it's killing her inside. It's like, holy shit, I have to fuck this other guy, and it's not my husband. You know, it's cool, but like I said before, it kind of ends randomly, but not to the point that it was stupid or badly written. It was just like, oh, it ended. It makes sense, but you know, it was like more of an open-ended type of thing. It's not even bad, it's just like, alright, it felt like there was an extra part and there wasn't. Because it's not like open-ended and then like, oh, something else. Well, maybe this happens or maybe that happens. Like, no, it seems like there's only one ending. Then there's Ira. I'm probably mispronouncing her name. I forgot how it's pronounced. She's more okay with what's happening and she just wants to get like some unfinished business sorted out. Her section goes more to like the monotony of it, but it doesn't really delve deep into it. And neither it's like, alright, it's kind of there, but it's whatever. These 2 probably take a large chunk of the plot since they're there from the start, but it's also something where it's just, a lot of it's just fucking around. You're not really going to remember these routes. Then there's the side characters, Gypsy Q, 66, and Kiriru, or whatever her name is. Gypsy Q is a waste of a character, and her ending is ass. There's nothing original going on since anything important can be gleaned from the normal plot, and then just it gets explained in the true end, and there's nothing happening in this fucking side route. Basically, you get 0 new insight, and there's like 5 to 6 like back-to-back H scenes, and it's fucking boring. The funny thing is, this is where like one of the gross like porn scenes are in the title. And that's been kind of hilarious when Kiriru's should be way more gross, where limbs are getting cut and there's like some skull fucking happening. And it's like, this should be super gross. But this character's so fucking out there and so like extra to the point that it becomes funny. Where I think this would have been gross if it was mute or if there was no voice acting. But because of it, it's like, it wasn't that bad, honestly. Kiriru is kind of fucked up, but also probably one of the more interesting ones. There's not a lot of screen time for her. Basically because these people normally off themselves, but she's been kicking for a few years. She's just insane at this point and has the hots for Teru for some reason. She's just out there. It's funny because of that, but it's like, really she should have more screen time. And here comes the other funny part. It's 66 is part of this other organization that kind of goes the opposite of what Teru's in. So Teru's thing is like, oh, let's make the body keep on running, and 66 is like, actually let's make the mind go on running, right? But you know, like a 66 is really nice, and yet the route is just as short as the other two, and it's a bad ending in a technical sense because Teru kind of dies, but they're so nice about it. That was basically like a very endearing way to finish the VN, to the point that 66 becomes like my favorite character. This ending is actually a lot more interesting than the other two as well, because like the other two are just, it seems like bad endings. One's actually a completely bad ending. The other one's like, all right, kind of bad ending. This one's like, hey, you know, my whole thing is consuming new data so I can keep myself topped up and keep on going, and that's how my organization works on. And now you're gonna die because you try to fuck with me and you lost, so I'm gonna kill you. But really, I'm gonna keep you like in a little container and I'm gonna keep you with me, and all your memories are here and we can talk to each other. You're like part of me now. You can keep your own like psyche and your own like consciousness. We talk. We can be friends, you know? We could be married. It'll be cool. And Teru's like, all right, yeah, that sounds fine. But it's also like 20 minutes long. And then there's Mao. Technically the normal and true ending. The normal ending is where you don't really do stuff with her throughout the plot, but also don't fit into the right mindsets for either Monami or Ira. And, you know, I'll talk about it later on. It's like, all right, the art style isn't interesting in the sense that it isn't clean or polished. It's one of those things where because it looks a little off or different, it becomes somewhat more memorable. You can think of it like Steins Gate or Totono. It's kind of like how you can tell when the title was made by like Minori, which is still different compared to when the characters themselves are like the artistical defining point, like Ue or that guy that normally does the Little Witch stuff, which is like, hey, this you see, you know it's from them. Basically, a lot of the art in Dead Days looks grimy and it works for what the title is going for. I wish there'd be more CG that weren't just part of the age scenes. It feels like it's like a 20 to like 80 split, even though it's actually not true. A lot of that is because the first quarter is kind of front-loaded with the normal CGs and it just tapers off alongside like all the age scenes are just kind of naturally longer. You can technically cheat and count all the minor differences of the age scenes like as a new CG. At that point, you're looking at like a 40 normal CGs out of like 1200. It's like, holy shit, there's so many. I think it's like close to like 40 age scenes. The music is pretty ignorable. It's really monotonous and it's either more for vibes or like the age scenes tracks. Some of them just sound like a 20-second loop unless you actually pay attention to it, or if you like pay attention to the progression of it, it's like, oh, it actually is different. But honestly, I think some of these tracks would have been great for like something like Silent Hill Downpour or something like that if the BPM was lowered. The one standout track is the OP from Mr. Fantastic. The OP is great, and honestly they hype up Dead Days more than it deserves. Funny thing is, I only heard them from like this playlist. I think it was from Spotify or something, and I thought it was from like One OK Rock, and it's like, I'm just confused. But later I'm like, hey, where's the Good Day track? I know it. That's all they said. It was a great track. Where is it? It's like, oh, it's because it was not them. It's like, holy shit. Overall, I'm not a huge fan of it. It started out great and it petered out in a few hours. Part of it is intentional considering they're already like getting used to this new life and they don't show them attacking the specters at night. And the first two routes are kind of boring and didn't really go deep into anything. And you know, like Monami was promising, but basically anything in the common is what you get in a route, but just a step further. It was interesting. It's just more of what I already had. They're technically fine, but not something I'll remember. The better characters are Tengen and 66, and I think some people would really like Kiriru as well, but she didn't really get that all that much screen time that she deserved. But then again, like I said before, 66 is my bias. He didn't get a lot of screen time either, and they're a great character. Tengen is a mystery throughout most of the plot. You know what they're going for, but they keep delaying it throughout the plot, so I was just waiting for his ass to finally to get ready. He's great. It's also some of the more funny scenes in the title. Mao and him are endgame material, and I'll keep that in the spoilers. In the end, you know, Dead Days was a cool idea, but a lot of these guys are just really horny. To me, it's not really my thing. I'm giving this a 6. Sometimes I thought about a 5, but then it's like, actually, maybe in terms of porn or whatever, because sometimes it's like that. It's like, even then, it's not the most amazing. At most, I would give it an 8, but I'll probably get 7 for that. But for me, since I consider more on plot and all that, it's more like a 6. So I won't be going over the spoilers all that much. I think Mao was a mostly like fumbled character. She's better used as like a foil for Teru. It's like they're constant back and forth of two stubborn assholes on different sides. Like Teru would do some dirty shit if it's easier, just a calculated type of guy that puts a lot of stuff in consideration before doing anything. It's like, hey, what gives me higher chances to survive? And Mao is like very self-righteous, will take like the spiciest road if it keeps her morals up. It's like, oh yeah, no, like I cut off my leg, but technically all my morals are still here. And Teru's like, what the fuck? I think she just had way too many H scenes. It's also too much of a drastic switch between her normal self and like her just being horny. And this worked out fine for the other two because you didn't really get to know them before that happened. And this one is just kind of jarring, which is pretty much like a plot point because it's just as jarring for Teru. Basically, she gets killed and she gets brought up back the same way that Teru comes back, right? And now he second guesses himself. It's like, should I have done that? It's like, now she really doesn't have a normal life either. It's like, did I fuck up? So the whole plot is a lot about like them being horrible at like communication. And a lot of the shit would have been resolved if their stubborn asses just gave each other like 10 minutes without like any judgment. Though really Teru is more at fault than her for this, but both are still at fault. Anyways, throughout the plot you can tell that Tengen isn't really all that affected compared to the rest of the group. He doesn't keep his memories and he's not all that horny. He's more of a husk at the start. He got hit with a death penalty, super bad dude, right? But the way the plot was going, you think he just made it into like a body double type of thing, and now he's trying to get into this organization and either get the results that they're making or kill like some higher up in there. And it ended up being that like, oh, he has the updated body that no longer has like any of the extraordinary powers that the other ones have, but basically he's like biologically immortal, right? He's like, he can be killed but he can be recharged and keep on a normal life and no one will really notice. And there's a whole lot going on here, but the gist is like, oh, there's a scientist, I think his name was Richard, right? He had a lot of surgery to look like the real Tengen, to then do a body swap so he can die and put his mind into the new body, but he freaked out and created like a new personality. So now the scientist is stuck as a Spectre while this new personality is taking over the Tengen body. So Teru is making a deal with the Spectre, Richard now, right? Where you're like, hey, I'll get you Tengen's body, but in trade, give me all my friends should get this new body too. You know the technology. He's like, yeah, sure, why not? Because otherwise I'm gonna die, so fuck it, right? So I'm skipping a lot, and at this point, Teru is also dead in the Spectre. And Teru, alongside Richard and his new befriended, friend, 66, goes to Tengen. There's a lot of funny sci-fi shit going on here because, like, Teru is calling Tengen from like miles away without knowing his number throughout like data shenanigans. And it's like, hey, don't end the fucking call. It doesn't matter if you do. I'm still gonna keep on talking. You still hear it. You're just fucked. You're like, oh damn, that sucks. Like, imagine a stalker just calling you and you can't end the damn call. And at this point, Tengen has built like enough ego that he doesn't want to die anymore. So now Teru and Tengen duke it out because neither of them have the superpower bodies. But they're like, fuck you, give me your body. It's like, nah, it's my body, fuck you. And Teru is losing due to like range differences because I think Tengen is like a little bit taller. But he keeps on going and Tengen is like, what the fuck, just go down, you fucking coward. Because they both know Teru is a coward and it's a little shithead. And Teru is like, yeah man, I am a shithead. I can't really change that. But hey, I can do some good things here and there, and for now, it's like, it's not really about me, it's about Mao, so fuck you, I'm gonna keep on doing this. And the hilarious ending is Tengen's like, you know what? You didn't fucking win. I'll fucking kill my own ego, thank you very much. I'm still better than you. Fuck you, Teru, I'm gonna win. And I'm just here doing like that Jerry meme. It's like, what the fuck's happening? And the rest is just, epilogue stuff. It does it well, and it handles how everybody's working with their new updated bodies, and now like, oh, Mao was waiting for Teru until he shows up with 66 at the end, but 66 is the go and kept Teru around the same with his like his fancy know-how of how data works. It's like, yeah, this kid would have been corrupted a long time ago, but I did what I did and basically just cleanse this shit so it would be fine. Yeah, I had my like own hard drive of him and every time he fucked up, it's like, all right, back to this, here's the backup. But here's the thing, I stopped caring about Mao. Tengen didn't lose. Fuck you guys. Fuck you, Teru. Tengen didn't lose. As a side note, the true route existing makes it so Monami and Ari's endings are also bad ends. They'd end up dead because the organization project was still going to be terminated. You could say that like, oh, the events of the true route might still happen without Mao, but it can go either way. That's kind of fun to see. Who knows? But that's basically the end of this one.